Hey YouTube, what's going on? Mind, body, spirit. We'll talk a little bit about drugs. There's many aspects of drugs you can talk about, but I want to talk just a little bit about crime and drugs and things of that nature. A lot of people think that black people are the ones that are sitting around here selling these drugs and crack and things like that nature, and they look at drug every time you see them on TV, they're talking about drugs, 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 and everyone knows it's just kind of a whistleblower thing. And what they mean is it's mostly black people because they never show that many white people doing it. But what they mean is black people out here selling drugs, destroying people's lives, and things of that nature. Now, there's a couple of approaches you can go. Now, number one that you'll know, well, that you'll realize if you just take just even a cursory look. One thing about people is that we love to get high. Now, when I mean high, I'm not talking about necessarily what you would think cocaine, marijuana, heroin. I'm talking about Xanax, Prozac, sugar, which is the biggest drug. People don't want to be in their right mind. Alcohol, people love to get high. Now, let me digress for a second in regards to these drug dealers on the street. What pops into the minds of a lot of white folks as soon as they start talking about drugs. There is no doubt that there is a scourge of the black community, and it leads to so many different things: domestic violence, black on black crime. I mean, no question about it. Chicago is one of the most violent places. They say that's worse than being in Afghanistan. Black on black crime. Hey, it's time for black people to take responsibility. It ain't white people's fault. But this is what I'm trying to say. They don't grow cocaine and heroin in the black neighborhoods. That's flown in from someplace else. And black people don't have planes. White people, you need to listen to me. We don't have planes. That stuff is flown in by rich white people. They get it from the Colombians and the Mexicans and everything else, but that's how it gets here. It gets into a place. So you got to understand that. And so you got to understand that the drug game, you like to look at the low-level street dealer, and you don't want to deal with the issues, the fact that that stuff wouldn't even be here. I'm talking about you religious right people always talking about drugs and prostitution and things like this. You always want to control what people are doing in their bedroom, the whole thing, especially the conservatives. And you're always talking about these drugs. And if you really, you tell about black people, you say, hey, stop talking about white people and da-da-da-da-da-da, and I'm 100% agreement with you, especially when it comes to black on black crime. You keep saying black people deal with your problem, da-da-da-da, but as soon as I turn around and say white people deal with the problems, that y'all flying this cocaine in here, y'all flying the heroin in here. Address that issue. Go to your people and ask yourself, why do y'all have this insatiable appetite for cocaine? What's wrong with y'all? Why do y'all got to have so much cocaine and heroin? And then when we're talking about pharmaceutical drugs, when your friends who are doctors write these prescriptions for you, go out in suburbia and they're doing every pharmaceutical drug you could think of, and then they're chasing it with alcohol. So we come to the conclusion that all people want to get high. And then let's talk about the best sugar, the best high of them all, sugar. Obesity. 67% of Americans are obese, not just overweight, obese. So we love to get high, and we know that sugar causes a physiological response in the brain. So we know that you're getting high. Your brain, when you start taking sugar, especially simple sugar, your brain, there's an activation that occurs in your brain, and you feel good. Oh yeah, a state of euphoria. So yeah, people love to get high on that sugar. And now we know that it leads to everything: diabetes, heart attacks, and inflammation, which is really the main cause of why people have heart attacks and things of that nature. It's sugar. So people want to get high. So you are absolutely right to condemn black folks for selling drugs and crack and things like that. You're absolutely right. And we have to take responsibility for that. But understand also, too, that white folks have to take responsibility for the fact that they're the ones that fly this stuff in. And because human beings have an insatiable appetite for getting high, then you have to understand your culpability in this thing. I'm not talking about all white people, so stop getting angry. What I'm saying is that the same thing that you say about us as black people, we need to turn inwardly and address our issues, our youth, abortion, things of that nature. You're absolutely right. Can't blame white people for that. That ain't white people's fault. Black people need to take responsibility for their own actions, but all people need to take responsibility for their own actions. So my whole thing about this whole drug issue, yeah, I know on TV it's portraying as the black guy's a drug dealer and he's got all these big guns and he's shooting and this and this and that. But all of that stuff, there's some truth to it. But don't get it twisted. Don't just try to make it seem like it's just black people out here and we're just selling drugs to everybody and we're shooting up neighborhoods and killing everybody, because that's just not true. More people still die from pharmaceutical drugs than they do for street drugs. And that's a fact. That's not conjecture. That is an absolute fact. And most of these people are white folks who are dying from these pharmaceutical drugs and alcohol and overdosing. So we'll address our issue as black people. You address your issue, and then we'll come to the middle about this whole insatiable appetite for people to get high. And then maybe we can, honestly debate this, but, stop get this out of your head that, black people, we just want to sell drugs and kill people. So the drug issue, it doesn't work. It leads into the prison industrial complex. And if we're really serious about drugs, we really ought to think about legalizing them. And at the very least, decriminalizing drugs. And what you'll find is that most people won't have this appetite for drugs, and then the violence will stop because there's no profit motive. And so if you're really serious about people and getting people off these drugs, you ought to really consider about making drugs legal so it takes away the profit motive, and then we won't have so much crime. Thanks a lot. Love to hear you chime in on this. Thumbs up this video if you like it. Pass it on to your friends and family. Peace.